She said Phil to send tweet. Oh. There we go.
I want to welcome everyone back to the Learning Clinic on CKLU 96.7 FM. I'm your host, Bob Kirwan, and as I promised, in the studio with me today is Ian Heft. Ian is running for position of City Councillor in Ward 1. Ian, welcome to Laurentian.
Thanks for having me.
You're home away from home.
Yeah, not as much anymore as in past years. I've been writing my thesis, so I think I'm here about once a week. I have a class I TA for, but I like the chance to be off campus a little more too. I've definitely worked here, lived here, studied here, so.
You've got an undergraduate degree.
That's right, yep.
In
English Lit.
In English Lit.
Yep.
And you're currently working on your master's.
That's right. I was in Con Ed and then did 4 out of 5 years of that. And when it came time to decide whether or not to do the last year, I chose to stick around and do my master's. I felt that was sort of where I was being pulled in. I was working here with accessibility, helping them run the testing center for students with disabilities for a couple years. So I've worked all over counseling, student services, accessibility services.
Wow. Okay, so you've had quite a background.
I've got my Laurentian experience, you know?
Yeah, for sure. So we're looking at you now taking the step to become city councilor.
Yep.
And I'm just going to close the door so we don't hear the background noise from the radio in the other room. But
sure.
Can you give us a little bit of an idea of your background, and I guess why, when a person's wondering, okay, do I mark off Ian Heft on the ballot or not? Who is Ian Heft? What is it about the person
Right.
that makes you a suitable candidate?
It's definitely a great question, something to think about. My biggest thing that got me involved was the idea of some of the services that were being offered, as well as the idea of this merger of the Ontario Works and ODSP. So I wanted to, because my work is in serving people with disabilities and people with mental health issues, I wanted a platform to raise the profile of some of these groups in the community. So I think I'm a good candidate, or a good choice, because I'm very much in tune with the current issues, the situation for individuals. I've got a diverse array of experience serving individuals in the community with mental health issues and disabilities. So for the most part, it's about activism, it's about getting the message out there. So as a communicator, as someone who cares deeply about individuals in the community, I think it'd be a chance to try to change some things and try to bring some new things to the forefront.
So you're giving the people at council, the other 12 people sitting around the table, you're giving people a perspective on running the city that is
kind of from the other half, I've driven transit before. I'm one of those people that lives, not paycheck to paycheck, but paycheck to a couple days before a paycheck, right? I've been a student recently. I am a student. I've lived on OSAP. I've lived on in terms of I've been on EI before. I know what it's like to have to sort of dig to make things fit. And I know a lot of people are in that situation as well. So I think I could bring the perspective of someone who's not at a stage in their life where they're a little more comfortable, but someone who's still building up to that.
Wow, yeah. So, and I guess is this where a lot of people talk about the youth perspective?
Youth engagement? I think so. I think there's a lot of ways I can sort of try to get out there to that community as well. I mean, it's difficult. There's a lot of apathy, right? But I think the biggest thing would be trying to just get the message out there. And social media is a big thing, and I'd continue to do that throughout, being on council. Transit, I just released a policy statement on transit. I think there's a lot of priorities with that. I'd like to just oversee this idea of this transition, because if the provincial government is putting responsibility down to the municipalities, that's going to, there's going to be a lot going on at this level as well in the interim. So just to oversee that, and just to kind of promote things that make a little bit more sense and services that are a little more streamlined.
Good. You're obviously one of the younger candidates who have put their name forward. It's,
Yeah, Mike Blesky is, as well as
yeah, Mike is,
at Cambrian, yeah.
Mike's been in here, yeah, I think Mike was in here doing the first show
Right.
that we did in January. So we're starting to get some interest from individuals who are at a certain, at the beginning of their career path.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, you're getting people that are at my stage
Mhm.
of the career path. Actually, I think you and I have had this discussion. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean.
You don't have to know
yeah.
anymore. It changes so
Yeah.
often that.
And I think that's one of the interesting things that that may be an issue that nobody's really putting on their platform. But this idea that what's here today is gone tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. It's very
And what you
ephemeral,
plan
very-
today, a year from
Right.
now, your plans may have to change.
Well, especially, you know, in a few years when council switches again, and same thing in Parliament, when you've got things going through and as soon as that gets cut, dies on the floor, you know? I agree.
Yeah, and I think one of the big changes in governance that I can see happening and that people have to get used to is this whole idea that you may take a position on a certain issue today, but if you're gonna say that you're never gonna go off that issue
Right.
forever,
Yeah.
I don't know if there is a better group than youth, than younger people, I guess. Younger used to be under 30, maybe it's under 40 now, I'm not sure. But,
40s and 30.
You've grown up in a society where change is the only thing that's constant.
That's right. And you know, the idea that, like, I saw a presentation where they talk about, you know, no wonder there's such a prevalence of ADD and ADHD because everyone's on the go all the time. They've got 20,000 screens around them, and then they're expected to sit in a classroom and lock down to something. But no, I think definitely there's a fleeting atmosphere. Everything is really changing and moving around, and especially with youth these days, and there's a lot of people changing schools, there's family dynamics, you know, youth go through a lot of changes, a lot of different traumas and dramas in their life.
And you have to react to them. Now here's the interesting thing, government works like a huge tanker.
That's right.
And it takes so much to change direction. It
Yeah.
takes so much to get any kind of momentum.
Yeah.
And I think, and I don't really think it's a matter of how many birthdays you celebrate. I think it's an outlook. It's a mental, I guess, personality.
And something you're
trait.
going to carry with you, right?
Yeah.
And something that's going to continue.
So how do we change this whole way of governance where generally, in order for anything to happen, it takes about 2 years of study,
Yeah.
committees,
Yeah.
and you don't have time because I have gone in and I don't have to tell you this because you're at that stage. I've talked to young people at schools and I've said, you know what, trying to figure out your career is like trying to hit a moving target.
Yeah.
You better be aiming where you think the career is gonna go, because
Right.
by the time you're ready to get in there, it's not gonna be the same as what you thought.
And they're going to
it
be
was.
looking for something different, or you're going to be overqualified, or
Yeah.
you're going to be
It's
underqualified.
not gonna be what you thought it
That's
was.
right.
When you, so it's anticipating the changes and anticipating the requirements becomes so huge. I mean,
And the master's is the new bachelor now. You know, education inflation. You used to be worth, 5 years ago. You're not now worth.
and there's such a discrepancy in terms of, as you say, there's a lot of people who live not just from paycheck to paycheck. I've never heard that before. Paycheck to
So that on
3 days
Facebook, I
before
didn't
paycheck.
make that up.
But yeah, it's a good way of saying it.
It's getting to that point, you know.
It's, just saw something come through on Facebook so that just reminded me that the cost of stamps is going up $2.
That's right. And yet they're cutting residential mail deliveries
Right.
up.
So
Get
it's
less for more.
right. We talked before you got in about an issue that's coming up in Valley East right now. That's actually in Ward 7, 6, and 5, where the recreation center, the Howard Armstrong Recreation Center, was built in 1983
Yeah.
at a time when the town of Valley East was on its own. And a lot of controversy about building it because you had to take your tax base and whatever the government didn't give you, you had to add to your
That's right.
taxes to pay for it. And so what happened was, in order to sell that to the community, that they would increase their taxes,
Yeah.
they promised that the rates would be family friendly and very affordable.
Yeah.
And they've been able to maintain that for 30 years, but what's happened is now that we belong to the City of Greater Sudbury, all of the other fitness places, none of them have the amenities, none of them have what was built back in 1983, with an indoor track, squash, pool, the sauna, like, it's got.
Similar to the Y.
It's very similar to Y, it's got everything,
Yeah.
state of the art. All the other places have a fitness room, or an indoor track, or just a standalone pool.
That's right.
So when you buy a family membership, you're not getting very much at these other places, but you buy a family membership at the Howard Armstrong Center, you're getting everything. It's an all-inclusive package. You get free swimming lessons, public swim, like, so City Council decided to increase the rates. They wanted to raise the revenue that they're getting from all their fitness centers by 2%.
Yeah. I heard it on, it was on the way up here, I was
Yeah.
listening to that, yeah.
So there's a situation, for example, as councillors, we gotta face and say, okay, we gotta raise by 2%, so what we're gonna do is raise by 2%, but there's one group that is so much below what everybody else is being charged,
That's right.
that if we raise them to the levels of the others, we can actually reduce the others almost.
Yeah.
But it means that a small group now is paying,
For everybody else. Yeah, that's right.
and I guess what, because I was around in 1974, prior to the building of this, it was the people who put their taxes in to build the Howard Armstrong Center were like me, knowing that, okay, I'm gonna pay for this now, when I retire, if I'm still living here, I'm gonna have access
That's
to
there,
this.
they're building it for the future, yeah. Yeah.
And so now, it's like, oh my God. Now that I'm there, you're saying everything that I paid before doesn't count anymore, and I'm gonna have to pay for, why did we even bother?
Yeah,
So, and then you've got the people who live from paycheck to 2 days or 3 days before paycheck.
yeah,
If you can go and buy a membership for $700, it's gonna be for your entire family. Now, you wanna go someplace with your kids, you can go swimming, you
Yeah.
can take the swimming lessons, you don't have to wonder, how much more am I gonna have to pay? So as a council, we have to take a look and say, what are we here for?
yeah,
Are we here to say whoever's gonna be living in Sudbury has to pay more for less services? Or we're gonna say, let's try to bring more people into Sudbury, so we have more people bringing revenue in?
or work better with the money we
Or work
already
better
have,
with the money we
that's
have.
right. I agree,
It's,
and like there's other options as well, I know the gym I belong to downtown, it's about $10 a month, but then there's a startup fee, and then every 6 months they charge you $20 as like a rate guarantee fee. But still, I mean, when you work it out over the year, it's cheaper than it would be. So, like you mentioned, bringing in more people or encouraging more membership, you would get more revenue. I heard you say that on the way up. So, yeah, I think the biggest thing is to look not at just the numbers, but at creative ways. You know, you can spread it out. You can charge less at one point, and then maybe have a little bit of a fee to offset that. But
Yeah.
it makes it a little more palatable, a little easier to swallow.
I wanna lead into your transit, paper, your policy that you released, because one of the things about transit is basically, we have to understand as a city that yes, about 5% of all of the users of our roads
Yeah.
actually use transit.
Right.
And every single person that gets on a bus costs the city money.
Yeah,
There's no way that a
Right.
transit system can make money.
that's right.
It can't be privatized.
No.
So, it's like the arenas, it's like the parks, it's like the trails, it's like the recreation centers.
Yeah,
There are certain things that as a council, you put your taxes in together, and it's a right.
Mhm.
You have to provide them, you don't provide them as if you're a business saying we have to make a profit, you say, we have to eat the cost.
that's right. So these people can get to work and get to, people that can't afford a car, the people who, which I was in that group until just August. My grandfather gave me his old car, which wasn't an old car at all. I mean, it was a 2005 Camry with less than 60,000 kilometers. So it's like a brand new car.
Yeah.
But no, I understand. I was in that group of the 5% too. But I think we could increase the percentage that rides transit if we had transit that people could get to more easily. I know, I used to be in the situation where, if I had to go to 2 different things within the day, it was hard to time that out.
And I remember you did some tutoring for me, and
Yep.
you had to schedule yourself.
So that I could
because you
get
had to
there,
take
yeah,
public transit.
yeah,
And there were some times when your tutoring session would end and it just wouldn't be consistent with the transit
yeah,
schedule.
yeah. I'd have to just kind of go grab something to eat, wait for the bus.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so what is your idea for transit? Because I think if certain candidates are gonna say they have certain things that they're really focusing on more than others, I think in from what and I could be wrong, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think transit's really important.
Yeah, transit and assistance services, city services in general. But for the transit, the biggest thing, I mean, things that we can do that just make a little more sense. I'm not saying we should have full service on Sundays, but at the same time, I mentioned a situation where I was on Southridge Mall going toward downtown, so toward Paris and Regent, and the bus comes up, goes to turn into like Southridge, and drives right by me to turn left. Like I'm on the other side of the street. He turns left into Southridge Mall, and the lady that I was with and I were like, what? Right? The next bus comes by and he says, oh, well, the bus driver can't actually safely stop there because of the way you've got to come to the right and then get into the left lane. They can't physically do it, or shouldn't, or whatever. So so if you have a bus stop that you can't actually stop at,
That doesn't make much
right?
sense.
Move the bus stop down further so that he can get into the lane. They might have changed that by now because I did ask the city. I was like, that's not a bus stop. That's a bus go, right? You go right by it. But
There's a good example. I don't want to interrupt you, but there's a good example. It's such a simple solution.
Yeah.
Why wasn't it thought about?
Exactly, and we still have stops on Sunday that no bus goes by, so you're going to be waiting for a long time. Waterview, and I think there's some parts in Minnow Lake, some other ones where they take about 29 bus routes and condense them into 12. But okay, there's one thing to save money, but when you're trying to do it to the point where it defeats its own purpose, because each of these bus routes runs every hour, but the routes are too big to actually complete in an hour, and then if you can't get it done in an hour, and every bus waits for every other bus, they're all being made progressively later throughout the day. So that's a case where, regardless of how much money you're trying to spend, it's not doing its purpose. So,
and what's the difference between a Sunday and a Saturday nowadays?
oh, Saturday buses
But I mean in terms of lifestyle.
That's right. Yeah, for sure.
I mean,
Everyone works
Sundays,
now.
everybody's on the move
Exactly.
on Sunday.
Yeah.
Like, if you go to some of the shopping centers on Sunday, it's just as busy as it is
That's right.
on Saturday.
And Saturday service, they make it every half an hour instead of every half hour instead of every 15 minutes in some cases, usually every hour instead of every half hour. But it's not, it's not that much of a reduction.
And so why are we even reducing it on Saturday and Sunday when most people
Are out and
that
about
need
doing
to
it.
use
Yeah,
it? will
and
use
actually, it's people who, like you say, 5% take the transit. These are people who might have their day off. So the most of the population that uses transit will probably be out either getting to work or leisure time.
And I know, for example, Santa Claus parades. I think my son and daughter-in-law, the last couple of years, they've actually taken the public transit downtown rather than taking a car because they can take the transit from the valley downtown and not have to worry about parking.
Exactly.
And it just drops them off right in the middle.
Exactly. Whereas the centralized transit, I mean, it might work if you're coming into town, but some of the thoughts about that as well in terms of, in Ottawa and Toronto, they don't have centralized stations, they have hubs, which might make more sense for us as well in the future. I don't know, I can't say I'm going to come in and change all these things, but, I would like to do a review and write a cohesive strategy about this, because, like, instead of everyone coming in downtown and sending them out from the, right now it seems like we planned our transit when we were a smaller city. Then when we amalgamated, it's like, okay, we'll send this bus out every couple hours, we'll send this bus out every hour. It was just sort of shooting things out to different areas, but I think they should plan their transit in terms of the space that they're dealing with. There's Transcab, and again, that's a little wonky at times too. But, if you had a depot, say, in the South End, for instance, I'm not sure, just off the top of my head, downtown, and maybe in New Sudbury, and say different buses have like different lines, have different colors or whatever. So if you've got buses out Garson, Falconbury, or divided by ward, like roughly, whatever you want to say, like out in, out to Lively, then out to, the Valley, Garson, two separate sides. But, like, come in, then transfer at the hubs, right? I don't know, I haven't thought this through entirely, but it would just make it a little bit easier to get from one end to the other without having to go through downtown. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense that you can't get from the university to the South End very easily either, when it's just, that's where you go. If you're at the university, that's sort of your destination. I used to walk the back path, be about a half an hour for a cup of coffee, do that about 3 times a week, anytime, night of the day, mostly for the walk, but at the same time, it's ridiculous that it's easier to walk the back path at Laurentian, go on Loach's Road and go to Algonquin than it is to take the bus.
Wow.
And it's just a dumb feeling when you're going so far out of your way to go downtown to come back up to the south end for whatever you need up here.
Well, I mean, we deal with that
Yeah.
in the valley.
Yeah, for
If
sure.
you come from the valley, go downtown
Yeah.
to go someplace else.
Well, there's so much in the valley now that I think is where they have their eye on expanding and development. Makes sense. That's where the land is flat, right?
And yet there's another point when we take a look. The valley is spread out.
Yeah.
So you can't
That's right.
get near where people are living.
Yeah.
And so for people to take the bus,
They
you
have to
often
go
have to
with the
walk quite a ways.
Right.
And if you're coming back with any kind of parcels
Yep.
or books
Oh
in the
yeah.
rain and the snow,
Done that
it's
for
not
years.
good.
Yeah. I
It's
know.
not
Yeah.
good. So we're into. I think one of the things you just kind of flipped through that caught my attention. Maybe it's because my age. I don't know. But what a refreshing thing to hear a young person saying, "Well, I want to get in there. I know I'm not going to be able to change everything, but I'll be able to give my perspective." He didn't say it in those words, but you're coming in saying, "These are the things that I feel are important. I know I'm not going to be able to change everything.
No,
but
I
I
mean,
may
it
be able
is,
to
yeah.
help people
Yeah.
see things a little bit differently."
Yeah.
And I think so many people want to get into politics because they say, "Well, I don't like the way this is done, so I'm going to go in there and I'm going to make the change."
And nothing
I'm saying,
happens.
you know what? You're one. There's 12 other people who have to be convinced.
That's right. And I think, we can all bring something to it. So, maybe my strength isn't on one end of, maybe business management or numbers, etc. But I can have someone else take care of that, then I can have it explained to me, then I learn something, and I can, we can all do something, right? So it wasn't one person that can come in and fix everything or change everything or run everything. But the biggest thing is emphasis on team building, because we're all going to have to work together. And if you want anything done, you need leadership that's going to sort of put us all together and get those votes through. So.
And actually, team building is it's another word for recognizing the differences
That's right.
and not ignoring the difference. I continually refer back to that story about the blind man describing an elephant.
Yeah.
Each one of them has a different part.
Yeah.
And they all know exactly what the elephant feels like and what it's shaped like.
Yeah, but they can't.
But they can't see the
See
whole
the whole
picture.
thing. That's right.
Unless they all listen to each other and say, "Well, wait a minute now, we're all describing
Yeah.
something that's much larger than each one of us."
Yeah.
So, yes, you're right, it does feel like a big wall.
Yeah.
Another person, yeah, you're right, it feels like a tree. And we put all this together,
That's right.
how do we come up with the best decisions that are gonna be good for all parts?
Well, and I was thinking like a mayor, for instance, if the councillors are each, feeling part of the elephant, the mayor would be the person who's trying to sketch this out then.
Right.
And if they can get the full cohesive picture at the end, then they'll have succeeded.
Yeah.
That's interesting, that works really well.
Yeah, and that kind of analogy, I think what happens now though is you get into this situation of, well, if you don't agree with me that an elephant feels like a tree trunk,
Right.
and you're gonna say that an elephant feels like it's a big wall, a
Yeah.
rough wall,
Right, yeah.
then if you're gonna disagree with me on this, then I'm gonna disagree with you the next time you try to describe something.
That's
And I
right.
think that's where we run into these battles where, well, you didn't vote in favor of what I wanted last
Right.
meeting, so I'm
Sure.
not gonna vote in favor of what you want this meeting. It's not even a matter of what's good or bad.
Yeah, well, it was really funny because in Toronto, I think there was a proposal for MLSE to one of the arenas, one of the big stadiums. They wanted to renovate it,
Mhm.
and Rob Ford was against it. And actually, the guy from Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment just said, "That's okay. That means it's going to be like 38-2." So if Rob Ford's against it, everyone else is
Yeah,
going to
everybody
be
else
on
can.
side. So
Right.
he doesn't care.
Yeah, so you're not,
I thought that was pretty
so
funny.
you're voting against the person, not against the idea, and I think
And
that's,
everyone else will anyway, right? Yeah.
it's definitely interesting. So, what got you interested in politics to begin with?
I've always been. I've always done, it's 5 years in a row I've done Laurentian's Model Parliament. We go to Ottawa. I met Jean Chrétien twice. It was really cool.
Okay.
I've just always, even when I was, at home, with my grandparents and stuff, just always been interested in what's on the news and in school. And I was just talking about my, grade 12 politics class, and the teacher said something about South Korea, and the kid next to me turns to me and says, "That's the good one, right?" Like, just always been interested in what's going on in the world, and I think, we have to care about sort of the people in charge. Those are the ones that are making our decisions, right?
It's not a very safe place to be though, sitting around city council, because
No,
I mean, all you have to do is just take a look. I mean, every time they do anything,
Yeah,
they're being nailed to the wall by
that's
somebody.
right. And the commenters in the Sudbury Star, right?
Yeah, so so I mean, it's, and you have to ask some people, you know, why you're doing it, like,
Yeah,
it's, I know I've spoken to many people about this, and I've said, you know what, nobody runs for city council to get any kind of personal benefit that's financial
That's
or
right.
really anything, because for the amount of work that you have to do,
yeah.
it's not, you're not getting paid for
No,
that work.
that's right. And well, I've always felt like someone who's got a lot of energy and likes to have a lot of things on the go. And I thought long and hard about it. I was asking all my friends, like, is this a good idea? Like, I wasn't going to do it unless I thought I could do it. And I definitely considered it for a couple months before I decided. But I think the biggest thing is that, you know, there's a lot of perspectives to bring to the table. And I have one that's useful in terms of someone that's driven the transits, or ridden transit. And someone who's been a student in this community, because there are three colleges and universities.
There's a big student
That's right.
population.
And I love my ward. I think it's definitely a really interesting area. It's got a lot of character, but it feels safe and it feels like a community. And it's got a lot of great restaurants. It's got a lot of great businesses. We've got the cat shops there. I want to hopefully support the efforts towards spay and neuter clinics. I know the city just recently brought out a coupon system. We'll see what we can do to keep making that affordable and making that a good choice for people. I just think there's a lot going on. I think it's a great time to be part of something like this. Just personally, because I'm finishing up my degree. There's a transitional time in council too. I think there's a sense that we want to. I think that people want change. I think people are kind of at the point where they want to see new faces on council too. So I think it all just kind of fell together, and it felt like the right time for me and for Sudbury. And I thought, I'm gonna give it a shot because I got some stuff to say, and we'll see what happens. But I was always in it for the right reasons. If it doesn't work out, I'm not to the point where I'm going to, sell my soul to get it, or to use, really poor campaign tactics, or take the low road. It's about running a positive campaign, learning a lot, meeting a lot of people, having a lot of, because most of my stuff is issues based in the sense where if I'm not chosen as a candidate, I still had a great chance to bring up a lot of issues and have a lot of discussions.
It doesn't mean you're out of it, you can still stay involved.
No, I mean the fun's in the getting there, right? The journey is half of the. So I wanted it for the experience. I wanted to try to bring new things, fresh air, new faces to council, and it's just interesting time to be a part of everything. So I just want to see what happens.
Good point. So you basically take the approach, and I've used this out in my area, where people say, well, who are you running against? And I've said, I'm not running against anybody, I'm running for the work. I'm running for the people.
That's right, and right
if
now I
people
don't have an
choose
opponent,
me-
so I don't know. Yeah,
Well,
that's right.
If the people choose me to represent them, then so be it.
Yeah,
But I'm not running against
it's not a choice over somebody else.
people. It's,
That's right.
we all have, hopefully anybody who's gonna put their name in as a candidate feels that they can do the job.
That's right.
So if they can all do the job, it's a matter of the people saying, okay, if we can all put you out on the ice to do the job, who are we gonna put there?
Who do we connect with the most?
Who are we gonna put in the game?
That's right.
And so now it's.
Now I can't
it's
skate, but I
comparison.
like the analogy. Yeah.
It's a comparison, it's a choice.
That's right.
So I've used that, I've said, no, I'm not running against anybody, I'm running for.
Yeah, that's a good
Now,
point.
it would be humiliating if there was nobody who had their name in with me and I still lost.
Yeah. Yeah. Too many no voters. Yeah.
No, that can't happen, but.
Yeah.
But I mean, so what is nice now is that, and you're in a part of town that is, it's an older part of town.
Yeah.
There's a lot of.
There's a wide range of people. I like it
It's a
there.
wide range of people.
That's right.
But there's a lot, I mean, it's a traditional part of town. I mean,
Yeah.
Coppercliff, Gatchel, that's where you find an awful lot of the, I don't wanna say old timers, but that's where you find a lot of people who have lived in the Sudbury area for a long time.
That's right.
So,
Well, I've always been comfortable with people, who are of older generations. I was raised with my grandparents, just involved in the community and stuff like that. When I was younger, I mean, I'm coming of my own age now, but when I was younger, it was much easier just sit there and have a talk with an older person, or an adult, an elderly person all the time. I was, my grandma's friends all thought it was kind of funny because I just called them by their first names. That's what my grandparents did. Like I've always had that sort of affinity for people who are older than me. A lot of my friends are older than me too. It's just like.
what's interesting though is you probably have more in common with some of their issues and their concerns than middle-aged people.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, who gets the discounts at the movies? Youth,
Students
seniors.
and, yes, exactly, yeah.
You know, so I mean, some of your concerns where you're kind of at the beginning of what you hope is gonna be a fairly
Yeah.
successful, prosperous
Yeah, fingers
lifetime. Now you've got the seniors who are saying, you know, we've gone through, we don't have the same opportunities that the younger people have. And yeah, money is a little tighter for us.
That's right.
We have to know what's.
Yeah, and a lot of senior citizens and the elderly deal with disability as well, which is
Mhm.
which is a big plank in my platform.
So that's interesting. Cost. I remember hearing you speak, where you raised the question at the meeting, I think it was at the Steelworkers Hall, where we had they were talking about the ward system.
Yep.
And the issue of cost came up, and whether you're starting out or whether you're a seasoned veteran of politics, cost is a factor, but I guess what I like is that the technology and the social media
Yes.
is starting to make running for one of these positions a little more accessible.
I
You
agree.
don't need the newspaper ads.
That's right.
You don't need the radio ads
Yep.
anymore. Because, and it's not just your generation, it's all generations are using the technology. We all have smartphones.
No, and
I
I
even
agree.
have one now.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
And it's, and as much as we do depend on the newspapers and the radio, they all have Facebook, they all have the internet, and all of their stories are going out.
Well, and the spending limit was about $1 for every person in the ward, so it was around 12,000. When I saw that, I was like, okay, well, you know, I'm not personally going to expend that amount, but at the same time, for other, I felt like that sort of leveled my playing field, because you can, you know, a solid strategy, good social media, engagement, you know, a lot of door knocking, you can make up $12,000. So the fact that the other people are going to be limited sort of helped me more than, you know, you can't have unlimited. It's not like the, you know, U.S. election. You can spend $100 million and you just avalanche the guy. So I felt like that was probably a restriction that would assist me more, you know.
Even the playing field, so.
That's right, and on the other side of it.
The other thing I've looked at, and this is not a good thing, but even in the ward that I'm in Ward 5, and it may have been an anomaly because the Ron Dupuis was acclaimed, so there was no election for.
Similar in my ward as well, yeah.
But in Ward 5, the actual turnout was something like 21%.
Yeah.
21% of the voters actually voted.
Wow.
Huge.
Yeah.
Like it's like 80% of the people didn't even come out to the municipal vote.
That's right. I think less than half voted citywide, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Citywide it was under 50%.
Yeah.
So, and I'm looking at saying, oh my goodness, I mean, when you take a look at the cost that's involved, I ran for school board in 2010, and I got over 50% of the votes, but there were 2,800 votes for the public school board, covering Ward 6 and Ward 5.
Uh-huh.
Like, there's in the vicinity of almost very close to 20,000 eligible voters. Now, granted, you divide it up between the Catholic system, there's all of the different school boards, but you're looking at less than 30% turnout in Valley East. So we're running into this. Okay, in terms of cost effectiveness, how much are you going to spend to get out to the majority of people?
That's
so
right.
The majority of people aren't going to come out.
That's right.
And so you're really running into this. You've got to find ways of becoming exposed. The radio show, we're hoping that as we're moving forward in the next 4 or 5 months, people will start to turn to this particular time slot, plus the videos that we're going to be taking, and we'll at least be able to say, well, if I want to find out a little bit about Ian Heft, I can go here.
Yeah.
Or you've got your website where you can say, well, you know, you want to listen to me have a conversation with another individual.
That's right.
You want to sit down,
An endorsement
listen for an hour, go ahead if you want.
That's right.
But you have a chance to find out who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where I'm hoping anyway in this campaign that we go from who's got the most signs and who's got the most ads to, well, let's find out something about the person.
You've got sort of a on the ground, you know.
Mm-hmm. You're using
chance to-
video,
That's right.
video is becoming huge in terms of today's generation, in terms of marketing and everything. And I really do, I think it's probably being driven by the youth,
Mm-hmm.
by your generation, and probably being driven by the seniors. Now, that's a philosophical discussion that could be held at a university level.
Yeah.
Because I think both of those groups have, I don't want to say a distrust, but they have a little bit of a distrust of
Yeah,
advertising, and they want to find out who the
Critical.
real person is.
that's right.
And I think when you take a look at a person that's in their 50s and 60s and 70s, they say, I want to look in his eyes. I want to hear his voice.
Yeah.
I just don't want to see his picture
That's
where
right.
it's been doctored. And
Yeah,
I don't want to
thumbs
see
up,
an
like,
ad.
yeah.
I want to hear
right.
his voice. And YouTube videos are perfect.
Yeah.
And so, and your group, you don't trust, I mean, the younger people don't trust advertising because you know that it's just kind of being put on.
That's right.
So you're getting into this YouTube, social media. If my friends share something with me that they like, I'm listening to them because I
That's
like
right.
my friends.
That's right. And Twitter and retweets. Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So you're not touching as many people as you think,
No,
but you're touching more people than you're aware of.
that's right.
And we're getting back, I like the idea that social media is getting back to word of mouth.
Yeah.
Because when I was growing up, word of mouth was the only advertising you relied on.
That's right. And if it was good, it was really good. If it was bad, you were
Yeah.
sunk, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so I think social media is connecting people to the same way as people were connected in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah. On a much wider scale, but
And
there's a lot more of us now, right?
And
So
fast.
that's right. We have bigger social
Yeah.
circles, and that's right.
We have 1,500 people on our Valley East Facebook group.
Yeah.
And I tell people, you know what, just think, you wanna blow your mind, just think of each one of those 1,400 people having 200 friends.
That's right.
Now suppose something was so interesting to them that they all
Shared it.
shared this with their friends. Now, they won't all do it,
Dissemination. No, you're
but
right.
if they did it, think of the number of people
Yeah.
in one click that could get.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
And then things that people never dreamed would take off get millions and millions of views too.
Yeah.
So
So it's
that's true.
good. What are some of the other issues? You've got a list of issues on your website. Any others that you want to highlight?
Well, I think again, working with accessibility is a big issue. The transit, I know there's some issues with the handy transit. We should be ironing out as well. I know when that came in, there was some contract stuff, like just to talk with the provider about how that's being handled. Because right now, if you want to take handy transit, you have to book 2 days in advance, a day or two in advance, and they have a 2-hour window. So if you want to go at 11, they can pick you up at 1 or 9.
So nothing spontaneous.
That's right. That's right. And you know, a lot of individual disabilities can take the current transit system, but depending on their situation, it might not be safe for them to do so because of the infrastructure. Maybe they have low vision, and you know the traffic is so. Handy transit is a safe alternative. So it's important that people who use it can get where they're going. I mentioned in my statement there that I knew a girl told me her mom headed out to the Valley or Hanmer to see her sister, and there was a mix up with the bus. So as soon as she got there, she got a call, hey, we've got to come pick you up in 10 minutes because that's the way the scheduling works. So she got out there in time to turn around and come back.
Oh, wow.
I know people who work in this end of town have to go to the Kingsway in the morning because the bus has to pick everybody up.
Wow.
So again, streamline things making sense. We think accessibility is parking spots and washroom stalls, but it's more about understanding the day-to-day reality that people face. I mean, I've worked with the Independent Living Center, friends and colleagues of mine. I've had friends that have become disabled very quickly, and it just changed their entire life. And you see these things, and it gets enough to get you angry. You want to make sure that businesses are using meeting their obligations under the AODA too, like for customer service, for employment. The issue with the Ontario Works and ODSP merger, I spoke this in the rally on Tuesday, is that if you're starting to value people and the language is, quote, like from their distance from the labor market, basically that tells you you're only as important as whether or not you can get a job. But there's 800,000 people in Canada who have a disability, and their disability doesn't prevent them from working. Half of them have a university or college education, and they don't have work. So I think we should raise the profile, instead of pushing people into poorly paying minimum wage jobs and saying, you're distanced from the labor market, get out there. You're trying to put people into a job market that hasn't traditionally been hospitable to them in the first place.
Right.
So I think the biggest thing is to pair people with jobs, to look at the efforts of like the March of Dimes, the why, things that will work one-on-one with an individual with a disability, place them with a job, then follow up. Because it's an issue of the labor market not catching up to the universities and colleges, because we're accommodating people.
And how do we do this as a city council?
Probably just promoting the efforts of the employment things, as well. If the ODSP and OW comes to the municipal level, we're going to be doling it out. We'll be handing it out. So
you're anticipating this could be this is going to happen. So you want to be in a position where you can
and be on the social services committee and work with people who are receiving it and look at things, because if we're bringing it to this level, I know actually it's at the city level. I believe we do have people work for the city that on the OW that run with ODSP and OW, right? But if it's changing, this is the chance to really put it in place. Because once it's set, it might not change again. So this is the time to set it up.
Yeah, and I mean, I spent my career in education, and one of the interesting phenomena was that sometimes the leaders, the people who are running the system, are so disconnected from the time when they were actually in the classroom.
Yes.
That they forgot
Yep.
what it was like to be a student and forgot what it was like to be a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And you're making all these policy decisions when you really
Right.
are so removed from actually experiencing it. I noticed that you've got you mentioned something about council structure and ward boundaries. Any thoughts on that, or are you just looking at
Well, just
open to review?
Yeah, well, we should talk about it. I mean, there's a lot of people who think that the current word structure is a little bizarre. I don't know. I think what they were trying to do was take an outer area and connect it with a sort of inner area, right? So a lot of wards have an outlying area plus part of
So
Sudbury.
we had our hand together in the table.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's an interesting thing. I do like the biggest thing when they were talking about the at-large. Basically, I thought of this as a response to the conference we did go to about, like that you mentioned, you saw me at, for ward boundaries, city council structure. I think I like the idea of keeping a ward structure because, like they say, if you have at-large councillors, maybe all your councillors or most of your councillors will start coming from one area, right? So I like the idea that you have one person in each spot.
Yeah.
I mean, ostensibly, you can run for another award, but it doesn't usually go over.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what the provincial requirements are in terms of representation by population. My understanding is that you can't have too much of a discrepancy between the number of people that you're representing, which means that a town like Cape Real would not be able to have its own councillor unless you had enough councillors that each area could have 3,000 or 4,000 people that they're representing.
Even
I
representation.
take the position that might not be a bad thing, to go
Yeah.
up to 18 or 20 councillors. It not
It's hard to
necessarily
say.
is a bad thing
Yeah.
to have more specific representation rather than a larger group, because really, right now, I'll take a look at Ward 5, it's the center, but it covers Valcarron, Pleasant Valley, McCrae Heights, Guillettville, and then it covers that area around LaSalle and Notre Dame, all the way to the tracks and all the way to, up to Notre Dame, up LaSalle. Those are two very distinct communities.
And there's a wide area in between too. Yeah.
So when I look at that, it's like I'm almost like a councillor at large
Feels like it.
in the ward,
That's right.
whereas probably a councillor for the Valcarron part and another councillor for the Hanmer part would make sense, and a councillor for the Sudbury part would make sense. But now you're getting into increasing the number of people around the table. And I'm sure that what would happen is it would take 2 years to discuss what the shape of the table would have to be to fit
Like
another
herding
6
cats.
people.
Yeah.
So we're into this dynamic now of, okay, how do we change it? And I think there's too many people who think, well, just go councillors at large, which then puts people like yourself and myself that have kind of lived in a particular area
That's right.
at a disadvantage of trying to get exposure.
Yeah. No, I like the ward system. I just think it was an interesting conversation to have, and if the chamber's starting to host that event, and we're talking about, you know, maybe a referendum on the next election, if they're talking about this right now, I don't know if they're thinking about that, but I just think it's kind of a good chance to, you know, draft.
At least review it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, and it's, I mean, there were 20 councillors when we had regional government. We had 10
Wow.
from the city and 10 from the outlying area.
Yeah.
And you had a regional chair that
Yeah.
was a tiebreaker. So, I mean, it's not as if it's a foreign concept to have
Yeah.
that many people running your government. And maybe if there's that many people, there wouldn't be so many people talking all the time. The
It's a bigger
other
feeling.
issue, you've got another issue in here on the Healthy Community Initiatives
Yep.
Fund. I mean, that's
actually
another,
It's very contentious in the community, but I think, you know, I've started to see comments about, oh, another councillor who wants slush funds. That's not the intention. I want to bring as much, you know, it was funny because you can't say anything without people jumping on. Like,
Yep.
I said, you know, I want to have an accountable process and manage it through the cans. And they go, well, we don't know the cans are beholden to the, you know, the councillor. That's not my intention. I don't want to have much control over what happens with this money. I want to oversee that it gets spent for the right reasons on good initiatives. I just like the idea that it's there because, you know, every ward gets a little bit. Then you know that there's going to be something happening in each ward. If you take all that money, put it in the central coffers, I mean, some wards might not see a lot of things going on, while others see a lot more. So I think just simply to make sure that, you know, each community has a little bit to spend on things that matter to them, you know, their improvements, their roads, perhaps, their playgrounds, their public spaces, upkeep. I mean, if something, you know, needs repair, you can just go to your councillor and have it done without having to go through the whole bureaucratic process. I mean, you want to make everything into one pot, and then you need to repair, you know, playground equipment. It might take you 2 years. So I want to, you know, because I want to keep this money. Obviously, it means I'm, you know, corrupt. I don't have enough money to be corrupt, honestly.
no, you're, and I can tell you, I mean, you're in the same boat that I'm in. It's called the Healthy Community Initiatives.
Yeah.
Healthy Community Initiatives.
Right.
And I think what's happened is it's gone away from what its intention was.
That's right.
Where councillors would be involved with their community, would see initiatives that people in the community wanted to undertake and could give them a little bit of a boost.
Yes.
And I do believe that what's happened is councillors have not gotten involved with their communities to know where these initiatives are, to
Yeah.
put the money in the right place.
Yeah.
I take the position that you can start a forest fire with a single match if
Yeah.
you light it in the right place. You just have to know where to light it.
That's right.
And so I've taken a look at some of these, and some of these things have been 25,000 here and 30,000 there. I don't believe that the councillor is really getting into the community unless they can go in and say, you know what, this group really wants to do something and it's a really neat initiative.
Yeah.
They need $1,000. I'm going to distribute it. I'm going to give them $1,000 to help them get this thing started.
Well, and that's why I think it's important to have proposal processes and you know, submit a letter, get a group together, petitions. I mean, not like, it would depend on the amount of money you're asking for. Obviously, if it's a lower amount, you know, you would take less work to get. But for the most part, if the more you can put in writing, then the more you can demonstrate this is how we spent this money.
Oh, you can.
Right.
The other thing is if you're involved with the groups.
Yeah.
If you're meeting with the groups.
Yeah.
If you're out there with the groups. You know what they're trying to do.
That's right.
So you can become part of this.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think if it was structured in such a way that it would almost force councillors to get out into the community to find out
Yeah.
where this can be distributed, and if it was that you could only distribute it in amounts up to $2,500,
At a time. Or,
then you would have to get out.
Yeah.
And if you didn't distribute it, you lose it.
yeah.
Now
Not
what
it carries
happens-
over and
Yeah.
then it gets spent shifty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So I mean, the people will say, well, you're just trying to buy votes and that. Well, no, it's a Healthy Community Initiative Fund. If you put it into a general pot and you have to make applications to city staff,
Yeah.
city staff are gonna be making the expenditures based on what's gonna make it easier for them to balance their budgets.
Yep.
And I don't think that is healthy. And so, you're right. Are you in favor, am I in favor of the Healthy Community Initiative Fund? I would say not the way it's being used now.
That's right.
But do I just wanna say it shouldn't be used at all? No, because at least I know that $50,000 could be used.
Yeah, well, I think it's money in the ward. Like we have money in each area to be spent, in a certain way. And I think also when we're talking about bringing money to the city, the idea of proposal process, you always have to think when you have a new initiative, how are you going to pay for it, right? I think for the most part, we can assist a lot of community organizations to bring money into the city by writing proposals, grants, and that's sort of where my strong point is in writing. So if I want to bring money into a community organization in my ward, for example, the cats, the cat stores, and they want to start a spay and neuter clinic, all right, instead of saying, yeah, the city can give you this much money that we may or may not have, I can say, all right, I'll sit down with you and help you write a proposal.
Yeah, great.
And we'll submit, and I'll write you a letter of support as a councillor, and we'll submit it, and we'll try to get. So it's about finding kind of new sources of funding, because as soon as you start talking about money, everyone jumps up and says, "Oh, you're raising our taxes, or you'll have to raise taxes, or you'll have to." But there, and we've been lucky in that our provincial representative has been able to bring money into the community as well. I hope that continues, but it's hard to say. So you need to think outside the box in terms of how you're going to pay for things too.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything in particular that you want to speak about that we haven't spoken about yet?
No, I think everything's on the website. It gets a lot of the issues out there.
Yeah. And I know that you're going to take an opportunity to come in during the course of the next few months.
Sure.
Because the Learning Clinic radio show is all, it's designed to have the candidates who are running come in and discuss the issues, not so much to promote themselves, but to make the general public more aware of what they have to be considering. Yeah. And I haven't come across too many people that have been in this room and on the show where the issues really are that much different.
Yeah.
The issues are all there. The individuals all have their own positions and ideas, but the positions are not that far apart.
No, it's all about what you place the emphasis on, right?
And to me, I think the emphasis is on the individual you're putting on the ice.
Yeah, that's right.
As a voter, does the person you're going to put in have that intangible that's going to make them able to represent you at the table and create some kind of cohesiveness out there, and not just end up beating a brick wall all the time.
Well, the biggest thing I'd like to, capitalize on or to bring is, when I worked here, it would just be like, you need to know who to talk to get something done. And, you need an appeal or something. And I know there was a student who wanted to write a test and she needed to get something signed. And I heard it's going to take a couple of weeks, it's going to take this, but she wanted to write her test in 2 days. So I was like, all right, look, is the registrar in his office? Yes, walk up to the registrar. He's able to explain it to him. He's able to sign it. I come down with and it was like the quickest appeal in history. The point is you need to know who to ask. You need to know when to kick a little bit. And we built a new testing center. We had a lot of different things going on. So in terms of if something isn't working, you've got to be vocal about it with tact, in the right way. But you've got to keep coming back. And you know what? It's the squeaky wheel that gets the grease too, right? If you do it in the right way. So I think
the first one that gets replaced too.
Well, depends. But if the wheel's not broken, you can oil it.
Yeah. Oh no, it's almost like trying to stay on top of the issues today is like trying to change a flat tire while the car is running.
That's right.
It is so difficult, and you're rolling, and it's. So I think whoever gets in there has to be flexible enough to say, there are certain issues that I'm going to say are important to me, but I can't say that there are certain issues that I will never change my mind on.
That's right.
Because it depends on the situation.
Yeah, and you should have a sense of why you believe everything you believe, where that comes from, and then when you know kind of where you stand on that position or why your position is the way it is, then as that develops, you can change too. You can, change your mind. You become like a flip-flopper and you're the devil in politics. But no, it's important to, as the facts change, think about things in different ways.
Things are changing, so you've got the variables to consider. It's been really good, Ian.
Thanks for having me. It's funny, I think I worked for you for 2 years. I don't think we talked this much.
No, we've never talked this much.
It was over the phone. I think I worked for you for a year before I met you. It was really funny.
Yeah. Word one, it's gonna be interesting the next few months. You've got the plan, you've got the website, you know what you're after, you know what you want, but I really do like the idea that you're putting yourself out there as a choice. Now, right now, you're the only choice, you're not gonna end up being the only choice,
Yeah.
but you're the only choice right now. But it doesn't matter whether you've got 4 people that are running in the same ward, or 5 or 6. You're not running against anybody, you're running for the ward,
Yeah.
and it's up to the people to decide if that's what they want.
For
So-
sure, it's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to having you back again.
Yeah.
CKLU is I think one of the best kept secrets in Sudbury, but we're hoping that by having the candidates come on, more and more people are gonna listen because they wanna find out more about the people that are actually running,
Yeah.
and more so, they wanna find out more about the issues. Plus, we will be putting a video of this
Yeah,
this
streaming.
show
Yeah,
on your website and on the Learning Clinic website,
Great.
and archiving them so that over time, hopefully by the time the election comes up, there'll be 2 or 3 different interviews that people can go to.
and I've got my first one. I was on CKLU a few weeks back. I have that up on the website too. It's www.ianheftward1.ca. And
Perfect.
join the discussion. You know, we can go on
Yeah.
Facebook, Twitter. We can get more comments through the Learning Clinic as well and discuss that.
Yeah, those are great. So I want to thank everyone for listening to the Learning Clinic on CKLU 96.7 FM. You've been listening to Ian Heft from Ward 1, running for council in Ward 1, and myself, host of the Learning Clinic, Bob Kirwan. Stay tuned for some music and our next show at 3 o'clock. And again, thank you for listening to the Learning Clinic and CKLU 96.7 FM.
Thanks. That was great.
It's off.